Nope. 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 It's really hard to find a good investment property. If you're looking for your first investment property, you're going to have to look at tons and tons of deals until you even find something remotely worth pursuing. And because of the number of properties that you're going to be looking at, you need to have a quick and easy way to be able to just look at something with a quick glance and then decide if it's even worth your time pursuing. Having a big, long, complicated Excel spreadsheet, it's great when you find something that you're really ready to pull the trigger on, and you just kind of want to double check and make sure that all your numbers are good. But if you're driving through the neighborhood and you've got your laptop and you're putting in all these numbers, it's going to be a huge waste of time. When you're on the go, you just don't have the time for that. You need to make sure that you can just do your calculations really quick on the back of a napkin to see if it's worth sinking more time into. When we were getting started in real estate investing, I almost pulled the trigger on an investment that would have had me negative cash flow every single month. With that specific property, I was making too many assumptions and I was being way too optimistic with my numbers. Lucky for me, that property didn't pan out and I've learned a lot from my mistakes. Today we're talking about your first real estate investment and how to analyze it quickly and properly so you don't get yourself in a lot of trouble like I almost did. When it comes to real estate, there's a lot of reward that comes with it. But on the flip side, there's also a ton of risk. So you need to make sure that you check everything properly before you pull the trigger and kind of make that dive in, because you can get yourself in a lot of trouble if you don't do it right. Today I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to analyze properties to see if it's even worth your time and to safeguard yourself so that you don't make a big mistake. And if you stick around until the end of this video, I'm actually going to go over and plug in some of the numbers from a property that I actually purchased and show you how those numbers compare to the method that I'm going to teach you guys. What's going on, guys? I'm Bryce with Sane Sense, where we talk about anything from personal finance to real estate investing. If you like what you see, be sure to hit that like button for me. And as always, please hit that subscribe button down below because we want you to get notified each and every week when we upload new content. Now, first and foremost, before we get started analyzing deals, we want to go over just a couple of ground rules. The first thing I want to go over is you need to make sure that you purchase a home below the national median. This only applies to single-family homes and not multi-family homes like a duplex, a threeplex, or a fourplex. So in 2008, when the housing crash happened, do you want to know who was affected the hardest? The people that were hit the hardest were those that had homes valued higher than the national average, which was $200,000 or higher. So if you had a home that was worth $500,000, overnight, your home was now worth maybe half that. Maybe it's $250,000 now. If you owned a home that was $200,000 or less, you were still affected by the housing crisis, but not nearly as much as the people who had million-dollar mansions up on the hill. If you're going to buy a single-family residence for your first investment, you want to make sure that you buy something below or at that national average. The reason for that is if something were to happen to the housing market again, that just kind of protects yourself and gives you limited exposure. The other thing that you need to make sure that you're doing is that you're falling in love with the deal and not in love with the house. This is not a property that you personally are going to live in. Other people are going to live in it, and they don't care if there's, granite countertops or, if it has this feature or that feature. This is a rental property. You want to make sure that the numbers make sense first and foremost, and that the property just makes sense, that everything flows well, and that it's something that's attractive and that people would actually want to live in. You also don't just want to buy a property so that you can have bragging rights and call yourself a real estate investor. My wife and I, a few months back, actually had the opportunity to buy a 17-unit apartment complex. But when I ran the numbers after everything was all said and done, we were only going to clear about $1,500 per month, which is nowhere near worth it to own that many units and to deal with that many tenants. Not to mention the roof was in disrepair, the parking lot needed to be repaved. I mean, there were probably $100,000 worth of repairs for $1,500 a month profit. Like it didn't make sense. So just make sure that you're not trying to buy a property so that you can brag about it and say that you're a real estate investor. Make sure that the property makes sense and that the numbers first and foremost do the talking for you. Another thing that I want to mention is that the things that I'm about to share with you may or may not work in your specific part of the country. If you live in New Jersey or New York or you live in LA, these are not going to be applicable to you because the cost of living are so high where you live. I personally live in a low to medium cost of living area, and so if you do live on the East Coast or say in California, then you may have to look elsewhere outside of your state if you want to follow these same principles. Tip number 4 is that appreciation should never be part of your calculation. And that's just my personal opinion. Some people will argue with me on that. They'll say, hey, I bought this property for $100,000, but it's in an up and coming market, so 5 to 10 years from now, it'll be worth $200,000. You know what? That's great, and it may happen, and if it does, then congratulations to you. But I'm a real estate investor, and I'm not a gambler. I don't want to just bet on this speculation that may or may not happen. I like cold hard facts, and I want my numbers to work out right now. If down the road when I come to sell the property and the property has appreciated, that's great, and it really is just the cherry on top of the sundae. But by no means am I going to put that in my calculations because I have no idea what the market's going to do. It could go up, it could go down. By the time I'm ready to sell it, it may have depreciated in value. I don't know. So I run my numbers with the facts that I have right now, and if something happens in the future and it does go up in value, great. And tip number 5, I just want to say that real estate is real work. It's hard. A lot of people think it's passive, and there are a lot of aspects of it that are passive, but there's still a lot of work involved. Even though some people may say it's this simple, it really is not as easy as just collecting rent checks every month. Also, you want to make sure that your profits are not super razor thin. I mean, if you're making $100 a month net, for me personally, that's just not worth it to deal with tenants and maintenance and vacancies and all these other things that come with real estate. I want to make sure that I'm making significantly more than I could in the market. Otherwise, I'm not going to bother. When everything's said and done, if you calculate all your numbers and you come out to find that you're making 8 to 10% returns, then why are you bothering with real estate? I mean, just throw your money in an index fund, forget about it, and it's just gonna be so much easier for you. Okay, so now that we got all that out of the way, the first thing I wanna share with you is something called the 1% rule. The 1% rule is just a quick and dirty way to see if a specific property is even worth looking at. The 1% rule says that your gross monthly rents should be 1% of the total purchase price. So for easy numbers, if we purchase a home for $100,000, we need to make sure that we can get at least $1,000 in gross monthly rent for it to even be worth taking a look at. Now, by no means is this a hard and fast rule. It's really just a quick rule of thumb to see if a property is worth pursuing. If you see a property that is going for $150,000, but it can only be rented for $950 a month, then you know right then and there that that investment is never, ever, ever going to work out. But by the same token, let's say you purchase a $300,000 house and you rent it for $3,000 a month. That's not a guarantee that you're going to be able to make any money with it either. So like I said, it's just a quick general rule of thumb, but it's the tool that I use to see if something is even going to be even remotely worth looking at. So let's do some sample numbers, and I'm just going to run you through the breakdown that I use to see if an investment is even worth looking into. Let's say we found a house that is selling for $100,000 and we think that it could rent for $1,000 per month, just for easy numbers. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I can rent that property for what I think I can. And the best way to do that is look at comparable apartments on Facebook or Craigslist or whatever website you use to look for rentals. You might think that you'd be able to rent your apartment for $1,200 a month, but when you look on Facebook and Craigslist, you can find comparable units to yours that are renting for $900 a month. So you don't want to purchase a property on the speculation of what you think it can rent at. You need to see what it actually rents at. If you're not renting out a single family home and say you're looking at a duplex or a threeplex, in this case what you would want to do is you want to add up all of the gross monthly rents for each unit. So if you're purchasing a threeplex, for example, and each unit rents for $600 a month, then you know that your total gross monthly rent would be $1,800. Once you have your gross monthly rent, you want to look and see if there are any other ways that you can make money from this property. So for example, say there's on-site laundry that you can charge $100 a month from your tenants, or maybe there's off-street parking. Maybe there's covered garages that you can rent for additional money each and every month. Or maybe there's a storage unit that you can rent for $50 a month per unit, so that you can get another $200 per month in rent. Just look at each property is so different, but look and see if there are other ways that you can make additional income from this property besides just the monthly rent. For our specific purposes, again, I'm just going to stick with easy numbers and say that we really can get $1,000 per month from the single family home that we're thinking of purchasing. The next thing that you're going to want to do is just pull up a mortgage calculator, because that's really the easiest way to do it. Obviously, I'm a little biased, and so I'm going to pull up the mortgage calculator that's running on our website, and you're welcome to use that too if you'd like. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to enter in the purchase price, which in our case is $100,000. Then you're going to put in your proposed down payment, which is typically 20%, so in this case will be $20,000. Next thing you'll do is choose your term length, which I usually like to stick with 30 years just because cash flow is the most important thing to me. And you could put it at 15 years if you want to pay off the property early. But like I said, I'm not worried about paying off the property early. I want to maximize my cash flow. It's likely that if you choose a 15-year mortgage, you're actually not going to cash flow anything. And I want money right now. So we choose a 30-year mortgage. Interest rates right now are probably about 4.25%, but I always like to overestimate and be a little bit pessimistic on my numbers. So in this case, we're going to do 4.5%. Now, of course, we don't have any PMI because we put down 20%. Now, property taxes. Property taxes are going to be very dependent on where you live. For my specific area, we're going to put in $1,200 just because that's what property taxes on a property like this would probably run in my area. If you're not sure where to find the property tax information, you can probably find it on your county's website. This is a number that you really just don't want to guess on. You really want to make sure that you get this as close to accurate as possible, because you might think that it's only $1,200 a year, but it could actually be $2,500 a year. So like I said, you can find this from your county website. Where I live, my county website is garbage, and so they don't actually have property tax information online. If I want to find out what the taxes are for a specific property, I actually have to call the office directly, and you can give them a property address, and they'll give you what the property taxes were for last year. For this property, I'm going to say $700 a year for insurance. And for HOA, I'm going to say $0, just because typically I don't buy any properties that have a homeowners association, but it's definitely something you should look on just to make sure that you're not actually, going to be surprised when you have a fee that you weren't expecting every month. Okay, cool. So if we look here, our total monthly payment is $563. So that means if we take our $1,000 monthly rent minus $563, that means we have a total net income of $437. Now, if you just stop right there and think, wow, I just made $450 a month, you're in for kind of a rude awakening, because there are a lot of other things that you have to pay for and account for that you definitely want to take into consideration. So we need to account for maintenance, we need to account for repairs, we need to account for capital expenditures, and we need to account for vacancy. There's a lot of people online who just take 10%, subtract it from their gross rent, and call it good. I personally think that 10% is just a little bit too conservative. I've found that repairs and maintenance and vacancy and everything along with that typically add up to be more than that 10%. And I don't want to have to be paying for anything out of pocket. I want to make sure that my investment is sound and square, and it can really just stand on its own 2 feet and I don't have to put any extra money into it. Capital expenditures are really big purchases, like replacing a furnace or a water heater or a roof. over the course of you owning this property, big things are going to break. It's not just going to be, little things here like doorknobs or locks or whatever it may be. You're going to have big expenses, and you want to make sure that you start saving for those now, because it's not if, but when those are going to creep up. On top of that, you may have owner-paid utilities. So it's not uncommon for tenants to pay for gas and electricity, but oftentimes the owner of the property pays for sewer and garbage and water. So if you're not taking these utilities into account, you could be in for a big surprise, because that'll affect your cash flow significantly. Now, we're not done there, because on top of that, you could also, if you live out of state, you may have to pay for a property manager, for someone to manage your property, because you're not there, you don't live there. So property managers typically cost 10% of the gross rents. And now going even further, let's say you buy this property and you have to do some initial rehabbing before it's ready for tenants to move in. I mean, this could be as little as $1,000 or as much as $50,000, depending on the condition of the property. I'm not trying to scare you off. I just want you to realize that there are a lot of things that a lot of people don't think about. And if you don't think about them now, you could be in a world of hurt when it comes time to pay for all these things. So just a good rule that I recommend is taking 20% of the gross rents and stashing that away for a rainy day, because they are gonna creep up on you. Like I said before, I think 10% is just a little bit too conservative. I wanna overestimate on all of my numbers just to make sure that if anything were to happen, that I'll be covered. Okay, so going back to our example, I'm going to take our original $1,000 and I'm going to take 20% off the top, so I'm going to multiply it by 80%. That means that after covering for expenses and vacancy and maintenance and capital expenditures, we know that we have $800 left to work with. And that's even before we take care of the mortgage. So let's do that now. Let's subtract $563. And we're left with $237 net per month. Now, my wife and I, we personally decide not to use property managers just because they take 10% of our rents, and we live close enough that we can manage and take care of our rentals ourselves. So in this situation, in this case, I'm gonna say that we're done analyzing this property, and all said and done, net monthly profit is $237. I mean, that's not too bad. Let's figure out what our return is. So if we take that $237, multiply it by 12 months, we come out to $2,844 net profit that we're gonna make over the course of the year. If we divide that by our initial down payment of $20,000, we come out to a 14.22% ROI on our money. I mean, is this a good investment for our hypothetical house? I mean, yeah, that's pretty good. It's decent. That's something that I would probably pursue if I were looking to buy something. Now, you may be looking at the initial $20,000 down payment and think to yourself, geez, that's a lot of money. Like, I don't have that kind of money to put down. Well, there is another option, and that is to buy a distressed property. Now, say we purchase a $60,000 house that needs a decent amount of work. What you can do is you can take that property, fix it up, add value to it, and then that's one way to purchase a property for cheaper, but still getting higher rents. So say we purchase this $60,000 house, we fix it up, and we can now rent it for $1,000 per month. The ROI on that property is going to be significantly higher because of the work that you put into it. Like I said earlier, this is not always going to work in every single area, but I just wanted to show you the system that I use to analyze my real estate deals. My personal rule of thumb is I am not going to purchase any property that does not make me at least a 20% return on my money, as well as $200 net per door per month. So as I promised before, I'm going to run you through some numbers on an actual property that we purchased last year. So I bought a duplex for $135,000. We've got a really incredible lender that at the time only required 10% down, and they didn't require PMI to be paid. So 10% down was $13,500. Of course, we did a 30-year term, and with this lender, because the down payment was so low, they did have a little bit higher interest rate. So we're gonna be at about 5.5%. Again, no PMI. Property taxes on this property were $1,900 a year. Homeowners insurance was about $950 per year. And again, like I said, I don't usually purchase properties with HOAs, and this property does not have an HOA either. Now, one side of this duplex rents for $775 per month. The other side rents for $900 per month, bringing us to $1,675 gross monthly rent. So if I take my $1,675 and subtract the 20% for my rainy day fund, so vacancy and repairs, maintenance, that kind of a thing, multiply it by 80%, we're left with $1,340 per month. Now, if I take that and subtract my $926 monthly mortgage, we are at $414 net. Now, with this property, we don't have any other expenses that we pay. There's no utilities, there's none of that. So this $414 is what we get to keep. Like I said before, I don't purchase any property that doesn't make me at least $200 net per door per month. So obviously this is a duplex, so we would take this number and divide it by 2. We're right at $207 net per month, which means this is a pretty good deal that obviously I would pursue because I purchased it. Now let's run the numbers to make sure that it hits my return requirements. So we'll multiply that by the 2 doors. We're going to multiply the $414 net per month times 12 months in a year and divide it by our down payment of $13,500. This comes out to 36.8% return on my money. Obviously, 36% is a lot higher than 8%, so this is why I'm all in real estate. We're making really good returns on our money, and it's significantly better than I could do in the stock market. And this 36% that we're getting, it doesn't even take into account the appreciation that we're getting. It doesn't account for the tax write-offs that we're getting, and it doesn't take into account the mortgage balances that our tenants are paying down for us. So yeah, absolutely, 36% is way better than I could do in the market when you take this and everything else into account. Okay, so this has been a really long video. There's a lot of information that I've thrown at you, but hopefully you can take something away from it. I'm not here to say that real estate is for everyone. In fact, I kind of recommend the opposite. Real estate takes a lot of knowledge and a lot of know-how. You have to be willing to get your hands dirty, but it's provided really good returns for my wife and I, and so that's why we do it. So that's it for this video, guys. If you have questions, feel free to comment down below. I'm happy to answer anything that I may or may not have explained in the video. Or if there's a prospective property that you're looking at and you're just kind of curious and want help analyzing the numbers, post the deal down below and I'd love to help you analyze it. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. Like I said, I hope you learned something. If you haven't already, please hit that like button for me, hit the subscribe button down below, and I'll see you guys next week.